Hi, this is Praios and I'm a professional gambler. Today we will look into the top 5 updates to Phil Galfond's poker strategy, which he made recently, I guess. The top thing I did then I was still playing poker was getting into GTO finally. I've at first thought it will not make that big of a difference. Actually, it made quite a big of a difference, especially for pre-flop, to learn these GTO ranges and to open raise and 3-bet and 4-bet the correct ranges. So yeah, definitely highly recommend to get a poker solver. You will find 2 of them in the description as well, PLO Trainer and PLO Vision. Without further ado, let's now get into the video from Phil Galfond and see what his top 5 strategy fixes were.
All right, Phil, you don't know the top 5 topic I'm about to say. Today's actually comes from a question in our comments. I'd love to see a top 5 amendments to your past poker strategies.
Yeah, because there are actually a lot of ways that my strategy has shifted over the years, specifically because of solvers. You know, I started playing poker 15 years ago when there were...
Yeah, it sounds like it's the same for him, that he also learned a lot from solvers. And what also gave me a really big boost was once I started using HUDs, because it's not allowed on all sites anymore, but definitely use them on sites where they are allowed. They give you such a big edge and you don't have to keep track of all the things your opponent does. The Holdem Manager or Pokertracker will do it for you. It will be way more detailed and way more on point. And yeah, even when you don't remember this guy anymore, when you played him, let's say 2 months ago, it will be still in the database and you will still see stats on him and will have reads once you come back to the table with him. You will also have detailed statistics on how you play, which you could also analyze later and find leaks, and will also be able to track your results. So definitely also highly recommended to get one of these HUDs and poker result tracking softwares. All links also in the description.
There were no such thing as poker solvers. As they've come out, they've taught us some things about the way poker works that we didn't really understand. So let's see, reaching back. Okay, so...
Yeah, I think what really helped was utilization of blockers, also pre-flop. So you 4-bet more hands with an ace in it, for example, which wasn't that clear to me just doing my own analysis. For example, just giving one example. And also hands are great to 3-bet, which are like ace, queen, 10, jack or something, because it gets kings to fold, and that's a really great accomplishment. I'm talking about PLO, by the way. Getting kings to fold in No Limit Hold'em would be quite hard.
Number 5, continuation betting flop too often. And this applies to Hold'em, to PLO, it applies to single raise pots, to 3-bet pots.
By the way, I think it's not necessarily a mistake to continuation bet too much, because most opponents simply fold too often, and that's why it's so profitable to continuation bet so much. But yeah, if people understand that they have to have a certain frequency to defend in order to not make it easy for you so that you have an auto profit, then you definitely need to go down with your c-bet frequency. And there are also secondary things you need to consider when c-betting so often, because you will probably not c-bet the very bad hands, and then it's very easy for your opponent to steal the pot in case you check back.
I remember when it was just like raise and then c-bet 90% of the time in Hold'em, or even in PLO, like 3-bet and then c-bet every time on the flop, which was terrible PLO strategy. I mean, I actually learned to not do that before solvers came out, but solvers further solidified the fact that, you know, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, they are just people that have like fold to c-bet, whatever, 60%, 65%. Against these guys, it's just so profitable to throw out a continuation bet all the time. And often these are these multi-tabling racks that don't even recognize that you are exploiting their tendencies.
There are some boards on which you can c-bet your full range, and there are several on which you definitely should not. Oh, number 4, 3-betting to polarized range. So there were spots where, this is way back, facing an open.
Actually, you are supposed to do it with a polarized range. This is first important for board coverage, so that you can also hit the low boards. Yeah, and don't end up with, and your opponent should not be able to put you on a high pair or something all the time. So that's why you have to be polarized. I'm not sure what his point is here. Let's see what he has to say.
Open and Holdem, I would, let's say, 3-bet, queens, kings, aces, whatever, 3-bet strong hands. And then my bluffs, I would pull from like 8-5 suited and 10-4 suited. But then there were hands.
Yeah, I think that's not great to do unless your opponent folds way too much. Yeah, when you use these type of hands, they should also be connected.
In between the two that I didn't play, let's say 10-7 suited or Jack-8 suited, depending on the spot. Ace-4 suited, I would just call, for example. Where
Ace-4 suited is a great candidate to 3-bet. You can make the wheel.
Whereas, since I've learned that you want to first figure out.
Also great about these wheel aces is that you can get stuff like Ace-10 to fold, which had you dominated.
Okay, are these hands good enough to play? And then from the hands that are good enough to play, decide which to 3-bet. And in a lot of spots, you might, a lot of times you want to have a linear 3-betting or 4-betting strategy where it's just the best chunk of hands, but a variety of different types of cards for board coverage or different like hand compositions for board coverage. Sometimes the 3-betting range is more polarized. Those situations occur when you have with calling range, basically. So there are some spots where people play 3-bet or fold, and there's no point in 3-betting 8-deuce suited when you're folding 8-5 suited. Like you just pick the better the hands that you're going to play and then 3-bet all of them, and you just pick from the best one. So that's a linear 3-betting range. But then there are some spots where, let's say you're defending the big blind against a middle position.
I wonder when you are using a linear 3-betting range.
Position open. Well, now you have a lot of hands that you call with, and then your 3-bet actually can be more polarized. It depends on the spot and the stacks and blah, blah, blah. But there are a lot of situations where you do not want a polarized 3-bet range. I'm actually gonna roll this into number 3. I used to love to raise with hands that were not good enough to call. And there are some spots where that's okay. But for the most part, what we've learned from solvers is if it wasn't good enough to call, it's pretty unlikely that it's good enough to raise. That's more of a PLO thing than a no limit thing, I think. But I think it's roughly, it holds true in a lot of scenarios at least. And I used to always take the approach of, all right, so my value raises, I know what those are. My bluffs, I'm going to pull from hands that are going to have to fold otherwise, but I can raise with them instead. So I don't.
Yeah, that sounds like a terrible concept. I never did this. Also not sure if it's now for Holdem or for PLO. I think for PLO this would be an even worse strategy because people are not folding to 3-bets a lot. I mean, they should fold some, but most fold less than they should, according to theory. So this is not recommended. I mean, I can see this working out in No Limit Holdem, where people often fold a lot against 3-bets, but you definitely don't do this for PLO.
Do that as often anymore. Number 2 is using a lot more small bet sizes. The funny thing is, when you go back to like 15 years ago.
I actually learned from solvers that I need to use a lot more small bet sizes. I used to do like 3/4 or 2/3 all the time just to be not exploitable and stuff. But this is a terrible strategy on like lockdown monochrome boards and stuff. So I think it's actually correct to bet smallish very often. So, I mean, it depends on the board and stuff, but yeah, let's see what he say about it.
And especially learning tournament strategy, you would just like raise and then you c-bet tiny, and then you bet turn pretty small. Like you actually would do a lot of small betting. And then for a while that got uncool, and you would do a lot more checking and then big betting with hands that want to bet. I mean, what we learned is basically you can't generalize.
Yeah, that's true.
There are some boards on which you want to just small bet a ton of hands. There are other boards on which you only want to big bet. There's some boards on which you want to big bet a ton of hands based on range composition. But basically, small bets are a very, very important part of optimal poker strategy, especially from out of position. So basically, I think like
I think that's also really important. You need to adjust to what your opponents are doing. And yeah, in the days of Solver, where you just play against the optimal opponent all the time, I mean, at least if you put the hand ranges into a Solver, this will not give you optimal results if you're playing a 70 VPIP fish or something. So yeah, you still need to learn and be able to adjust against the weak opponents. And these are the guys you want to play against and not the regulars, because you will not make a lot of money, especially if you also take the rake into account, which is quite high on small and mid stakes. And there's not much high stakes action going on nowadays. And most of it is on GG, I think. And GG has insane rake on high stakes too.
I think 10 years ago, small,
especially in PLO, by the way, there's like 1 BB cap. So you pay like 1K every hand when you play PLO 100K. So that's quite expensive, but very profitable for GG.
Bets out of position were almost exclusively, they were to do one of two things. One, it was to just put a small amount in the pot so your opponent doesn't bet bigger. And you want to stop your opponent from raising, or you want to induce your opponent to raise so you can then 3-bet because you have a huge hand. And now we've learned that, there's a much more blended, nuanced strategy that just involves a lot of small betting because, let's say, for example, you're leveraging a certain part of your range that you have an advantage in. And once you bet big, the kind of gap or deficiencies in your opponent's range don't matter anymore because they have the hands to defend against big because they don't have to defend as many. But if you defend small, or if you bet small, they have to defend so many hands that they get into some really uncomfortable spots based on the makeup of their range. And also it's just like if you want to get value across two streets for small sizing, you have certain hands that can do that. But once they start betting big, they're no longer good enough to value bet. Anyways, there are a lot of spots like that where it comes up. So number two, small betting. Number one is an interesting one because so number one is game flow.
Yeah, we definitely learned a lot more about which size to use in what situation. And yeah, this was unclear and people were experimenting a lot back in the day. And nowadays it's basically solved which sizes are best in certain situations.
The concept of game flow. Game flow means, you could call it kind of metagame, but it's not overall metagame. It's in the moment game flow, what's been happening. Game flow is essentially, I haven't turned c-bet in a long time. So I think my opponent's going to believe me if I c-bet flop and turn. Game flow is still a thing, but over the years...
For me, game flow never was really a thing.
I've come to learn... Well, first of all, against players who are studying theory, it's much less of a thing. They're not too concerned with game flow. And second of all, as I play against players who are just focused purely on playing theoretically optimally, you notice a lot of things that feel like game flow.
I think there's something called image. So people might think you're very tight or very loose, but game flow, I can't really follow. And I even think when you fall into the trap that you think, okay, I haven't done anything in an hour, so I can get away now. In my experience, that's not working out great all the time because people often don't pay attention, or they just don't give a fuck, or they know that this was just a coincidence and that you play a solid game and you probably just did not have any hands.
Flow, and feel like people are adjusting in certain ways when actually it's just the run of cards that they're getting or the run of cards on the board. So I think interpreting game flow and utilizing it to my advantage is something that I've stopped doing much.
Okay, I never did that, and I think it's also correct to not use it at all.
There are still times where a player's losing and they've just called like a big river bet. They've just called a big river check raise and they've been wrong both times, and you can tell they're really frustrated and they feel stupid doing so. I think they're going to be unlikely to put themselves in a tough spot or unlikely to call a big river bet again, depending on the player, but because they don't want to feel stupid again.
I think many people will be more likely to do that again because they are so tilted and don't have their emotions under control, and then at some point think, oh God, cannot have it again. And then they just click call or put the chips in the middle, depending on your live or online.
Similarly, if they just got caught with like a big bluff, they don't want to go for a big bluff again, feel stupid again, don't want to risk.
Or they might do it again because they think that their opponents think that they will not do it again light, and therefore they do it again very light. And yeah, again, if people are on tilt, they're trying to chase very hard, and you cannot chase if you don't win pots, so you might have to bluff again next hand.
Feeling stupid again, because then the check raise becomes about more than just risking the money. It's also risking the emotional pain that comes along with it. An interesting thing that I'm reminded of, and if you've watched all of my videos, I've probably told this story before, that combines game flow and raising hands that can't call, was the most memorable hand I've played. I was playing heads up for a bracelet. It was 25K World Series Poker 6-max tournament, and I hadn't raised a flop in a really long time. And I just decided to raise complete airball on flop. And I'm gonna make up the board to get roughly the idea. King, Jack, 4. And I check raise like 8-5 offsuit because of game flow, which is something I wouldn't do anymore. But I hadn't raised in a while. I thought he'd be very believable. And so I raised. Turn was a 10. So completed a bunch of draws, and because every like flop draw got there, I was like, he's gonna believe me and just fold a bunch of stuff. So I bet turn something like half pot. And I have about a pot size bet left on the river, which I have him barely covered, I think. Or maybe he has me barely covered. Anyways, the stacks were close. And he actually min raises the turn. And I can't call out of position with 8 high. The only play is go all in or fold. And I really didn't think that he would raise a good hand. Like, I just didn't believe that he would raise a good hand there, because it just looks like I'm going to go all in on the river. So why would you prevent me? Like, I'm young at this point. I have an aggressive image.
I mean, some people are just stupid and think, okay, we want to... I mean, my thinking would be, when he min raises the turn, he probably has a very good hand, but he does not want me to fold. Therefore, he's giving me a very good price now, and as well a very good price on the river. So I would have him on a nutted hand. So the complete opposite than Phil. Let's see how this story ends up.
I'm the online guy, and my opponent played online. Steve Sung. He played online, but he came from a live background and a strong player. But yeah, I just thought there's no way that, like, if he has a good hand, he's just going to let me keep bluffing. He wants to let me keep bluffing. So why would he raise? I tanked with 8 high, no draw. Like, I've never gone all in on the turn, or flop, like gone all in with cards to come with 0 equity when called.
No pair, no draw. Let's see if this works out. I mean, he's telling the story. It's probably working out.
I always had like, a gut shot or something, a flush draw. I'd never done it before, and I just felt really believed that it would work, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And actually, a little bit of of what I just talked about with game. This wasn't game flow related, but there's a lot of emotional pain that goes along with like making a play, like a just complete kamikaze bluff like that, and just getting called. And
yeah, I think we are also better candidates to do it with. At least like blocking a queen or something for the nut straight.
Feeling really stupid for a really long period of time. So I ended up folding. I couldn't do it. I saw on the stream afterwards, he actually had like a weak top pair.
Weak top pair? That's like, so we are both off of our reads. I mean, what the fuck? Why is he raising weak top pair? I mean, is he calling an all-in? Maybe, because the odds will be great then, I guess. I mean, that's... Neither Phil nor I'm right. I mean, he might have been turned his hand into bluff doing this, or... I mean, this is strange, and maybe his read that this is a good player is not correct. Yeah, he owned us both, especially if he calls the all-in. I mean, I wasn't getting owned because I would fold, but yeah, Phil almost got all in.
And I'm pretty sure it was raise folding because he didn't want to face the river bet, which is what I suspected. If he had,
I mean, that's such a bad strategy to raise fold. I mean, if only pot size is left, and he also put in a raise on the turn, so there is almost nothing left. So this seems a terrible play.
Big hand, he wanted to let me bet river. And so that I ended up losing, and that's my only second place in the World Series of Poker. And so that hand was very memorable. It would have been like, had I shoved, I would have had 80% of the chips in play.
Or you would
I
have
was at
made the crying call.
60-40 or 70-30 chip disadvantage, and did not win. So if I could go back and play that now, I guess actually.
I mean, there are some sort of players that don't think things through or don't get the stack sizes correct. So this guy could be like, okay, I'm raise folding here because I don't want to face a river bet. But when he realizes, okay, I'm getting whatever 5-1, 4-1 for this call, and I think there's a slight chance Phil might be bluffing, so I have to call now. So maybe it was like a race for information or whatever back in the day. This was a common thing that you might do. But it might turn into a crying call because he did not take stack size into account.
I wouldn't have check raised the flop, but had I check raised the flop and bet the turn, I think I probably would have gone with it. Trusted my read. I guess that wasn't one of the 5 things listed, but we'll make that the bonus number 0, which is that over time, and this just comes with experience and having a relatively successful poker career, I've learned to trust my reads. And I've had enough of those spots where I've done something crazy and been right, and some where I've done something crazy and been wrong. But I've had so many spots I've been right more often than not, so that if I make a guess like that and it doesn't work out, I don't beat myself up over it. I just say, well, usually when I have a feeling that strong, I'm right. This time I wasn't. I can move on. That's our top 5 plus.
Okay, yeah, bonus tip, trust your reads. That's not a bad one. Let's see what all the tips were and see if these also are true for me.
So number 5, continuation betting.
Continuation. Yeah, okay, you should not continuation bet relentlessly, especially against, I mean, you should, in my eyes, you should do against people who are just folding too much. But yeah, against people who play well, you should not do it. So that's something good you have learned. But I already, I mean, I knew this a long time already. So that's still a good tip for beginners. So let's see what the next one is.
Oh, number 4, 3-betting.
I think 3-betting sort of polarized range isn't too bad. And it's often correct in some spots. Yeah, you have to look in the specific situation to find out what's the best 3-betting strategy is. Yeah, so work with solvers and figure it out. And yeah, also very important, adjust your ranges according to the tendencies of your opponent. If he's not playing close to GTO, yeah, make the proper adjustments. And what's the next one?
3. I used to love to raise with hands that were not good enough to call. And
raise with hands not good enough to call. Yeah, I mean, that is actually not that bad if it's no limit hold'em and people fold a lot. But yeah, for PLO, this is terrible advice, and in general, yeah, it's not great to do this. Yeah, I think if you play a GTO style and are not exploiting anyone, you probably should not do it at all. I mean, I never did that, so that's nothing I learned.
Is using a lot more small bet sizes.
I would phrase this differently. I would say, yeah, I learned the proper sizes for different board textures, and before that, it wasn't clear to me what size to use, and I was experimenting a lot or just using a standard size for everything, although this is stupid given the things we know today. Okay, first one, game flow. Yeah, game flow is just complete bullshit. I mean, there's something like image, but game flow is just like, yeah, nonsense. Okay, I think this was helpful. And at least if you are just a beginner or intermediate, you learned a lot. Yeah, this was a good video. I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, share if you did. Yeah, thanks for watching. Bye until next time.